Good morning, this is Jack from Shark in the Markets, and this is the pre-market webinar for the morning of Wednesday, the 15th of April. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. This is a video for paying subscribers at chartingthemarkets.substack.com, and it's published on YouTube after a delay of 24 hours. All right, great. Let's have a look at the, obviously we made higher highs. We've now made the IHS target on ES at 69.75, and we've now made also the IHS target at 26.050 on NQ. We haven't quite made the double bottom target on RTY, but we're very, very close at 27.33, 27.40 area. And on YM, we haven't quite made the minimum double bottom target here, which I've got at 48.970, but we're getting pretty close. So in terms of Nikkei, we have come very, very, very close to a retest of this high here. To a test move to the inverted head and shoulder target at 59,000. We haven't quite made that either. I think there's a reasonable expectation we're going to make all of those targets, possibly, well, including the minimum target on Dow today or tomorrow. We shall see. In the short term, we've got weak 60-minute sell signals fixed. These are the sort of sell signals I'm thinking may well get further highs. We're already getting another little high here, and these may turn into full sell signals, but we've got a weak sell signal fixed on ES, on NQ, on YM, on DAX, and STX 50. So we will see how that goes, although I have to say I was a little shaken when the market went straight through all of the very nice hourly sell signals on the RTH charts this week, or at least the Dow one has survived, but the other three have gone. That is a very unusual occurrence. So I am wondering whether these will be respected. But we're getting pretty close to some major resistance, which is the retest of the all-time highs. We'll have a look at that in a minute. In the short term, not seeing any obvious topping patterns here, not seeing any obvious reason to think this is about to turn. Still got some open targets above. We shall see how that goes. In terms of DAX, I'm looking for a retest this high here. The SDX, we've already seen that. Nikkei's almost made it the IHS target, and just beyond that, we've got the retest of the all-time high, which is, well, not far above at all. Let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. All right, looking at SPX. SPX, we are on a daily upper band ride, and we've been on it for 4 days. Can this go higher? Yes. Do we have any negative divergence on the daily chart? No. In terms of the hourly chart, we had the RSI 14 sell signal fail and the RSI 5 sell signal fail. We're kind of at nosebleed levels on the RSI 14 and RSI 5 here. Hey, George. And actually, it's not the highest we've been. There was a high here where we got higher than this on the RSI 14, but, we are at nosebleed levels. But the sort of nosebleed levels where we'll often see a bit of a retracement and come back and set up another divergence. So we're pretty close to the retest of the all-time high here, and I'm thinking that's on the cards. And in terms of, I'm thinking we may see a lot more downside over the coming months, and I think this Iran war is far from over, and also far from having delivered all of the issues which are likely to come from it. So I think a retest of this high here potentially sets up a large double top to set up another leg down, which could get us down in this case, potentially down into about the 5,600 area. Looking at the 15-minute charts, we've possibly overthrowing this, but we may be setting up another trend line here. I think the obvious trend line, gotta say, would be, hang on, just let me just draw that in for a moment. The obvious trend line would come from here. Nope, we've already gone through that. That was the obvious alternative. So, all right. So we've got no obvious alternative here, but we have made the IHS target at 69.12, and we're getting pretty close. We came within 35 handles yesterday of a retest of the all-time high, and that is very much on the cards. Looking at the cues, daily chart, we are on Daily upper band ride day 3. Hourly chart, we had an RSI 14 sell signal brewing and we lost it. RSI 5 sell signal fixed and that failed. 15-minute chart, we had an IHS breakup with a target in the 627.5 area, and that has now made target. How close are we to a retest of the all-time high? A bit further away than we are on SPX, but most definitely in range. Looking at Dire. Dire, we're actually setting up some negative divergence here on the weak divergence on the RSI 5. The RSI 14 buy signal, which I have to say I wasn't rating the chances of that. I don't rate these particularly highly as signals, but this one is getting into the possible near-miss target area. Looking at the hourly chart, this is where the only place where the RSI 14 sell signal has survived so far. Because this has been the weakest of the lows. We had an IHS which broke up with a target in the 486.25 area. That has now made target pretty much, or we were just very slightly below it, and near as damn it, that has pretty much been made. All right, let's have a look at the IWM chart, where right on the daily chart, daily upper band ride, and this one is day. We've completed 4 days, getting a little close to the 3SD upper band, but obviously a retest of the all-time high is very much within range. The high yesterday was at 269.42, and the all-time high is at 271.11. On the hourly chart, we had an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, that failed to. RSI 5 sell signal fixed, that failed to. Don't actually see that happen an awful lot. And the double bottom, which broke up with a target in the 266 to 8 area, has made that target. Are we close to a retest of, the all-time high? Very much so. The one which we're not particularly close, I think, is on Dire. Here, I'm not really expecting it, but do we have a large alternative pattern here? Yes, we do. So this could be forming a head and shoulders. We didn't really have a lot of option on that on the other indices, but this one we could get a head and shoulders. So potentially we could get 4 much larger, much larger topping patterns, which would be potentially take us an awful lot lower. One thing to mention here, we had a head and shoulders breakdown with a target at the 447 area. That hasn't failed yet, and it won't fail until we get over the right shoulder high, which I've got at 487.98. I'll be watching that area, because if the head and shoulders fails, then that would often trigger a retest of the all-time high. All right, let's have a look at DAX. We are making some upside progress, but not on the kind of level that we're seeing on the US indices at the moment. On Nikkei, we are getting pretty close to a retest of the all-time high, and at this point, with the head and shoulders here having already failed, that's pretty much the obvious next target. All right, let's have a look at DX. Okay, DX, we are still, I have to say, it's kind of a cloud of confusion in terms of what's happening in the Middle East, and in terms of the, in terms of what is happening in terms of the blockade. There does seem to be quite a lot of traffic, increasing amounts of traffic going through. It does look as though maybe the US is trying to interdict the Iranian ports, but letting everything else through, and they're letting through traffic which is paying the toll to the Iranians. If that's the case, then obviously there will be getting a fair amount of oil and other things getting through, and that makes the economic supply shock less. So watching that with interest. It's not entirely clear yet, but it does appear pretty obvious that a fair number of ships going through, and also there have been a couple of opportunities where the US could have tried to forcefully interdict Chinese vessels or Pakistani vessels or Indian vessels, which of course would be an act of war against those countries. And so far the US has not been doing that, which is of course likely pretty sensible. In the meantime, oil is not spiking, and DX is going down at the moment. We do have a double top here, but I would say this is kind of looking like a bull flag forming, and it might be. I'm slightly skeptical about this making target. I do not think this crisis is anything close to over. But I am thinking for another leg down, this a retest of the all-time highs and setting up larger reversal patterns is actually a positive thing. In terms of EURUSD, we've got an IHS which has broken up with a target in the 1.1875 area. Haven't made that yet. GBP's been on the up. USD JPY looks like a bull flag forming. USD CAD looks like a bull flag forming. Waiting to see, pretty close to a retest of this high on the Australian dollar, and not particularly clear what's happening really with NZ. Possible IHS that's broken up. Yeah, I'm wondering about that. We shall see how that goes. All right, looking at bonds. ZB, we've got, we're coming back in for a retest of the monthly pivot, which has been pretty solid resistance so far. Could this be an IHS forming? Yes, it could actually. And just going to draw that in. But that is worth noting as a possibility here. I'm not seeing any particular reason for that to play out, but especially with the awful inflation numbers that just came out. But we will see how that goes. Yeah, is this a potential IHS? Yes, it is. And this could be setting up for a big breakup. Equally, it could be setting up for a breakup and then fell back into the lows. But is that a contender as an IHS? Yes, it is. In terms of ZN, ZN, possible IHS here too, not nearly as nice. But I am wondering about that as a possibility. We've already retested this high and made a slightly higher high. All right, looking at oil. Oil is being fairly subdued. We are seeing some oil getting through. And of course, obviously, we're still working through our way through reserves, and the oil crisis is most serious in the Far East at the moment. But do I think this is being artificially suppressed? Yes, or at least there is a big difference between the futures prices and the cash on the nail, which is around 140 to 150 at the moment. We will see how this develops, but in the absence of more evidence to the contrary, I'll be assuming this will be heading up in due course. CL, we got back down into the 87.50 area, which was frankly amazing. I'm not expecting it to go an awful lot lower. I mean, in all honesty, after this crisis is finished, I'd be expecting to see a risk premium on oil that's probably $20 for the next year or two, really. So actually, in terms of getting down to a floor here, this isn't actually that far away from it, and I'm surprised it went that low. HO has been pulling back a bit and retested this low. RBOB has pulled back a bit, but hasn't retested that low yet. Not really seeing anything in terms of a pattern here, and I don't really trust it because the physical price has diverged quite a lot from the futures price. NG is continuing lower. We've broken the trend line I was thinking might be support. We've got a 60-minute buy signal fixed so far. That's delivered absolutely nothing. GC. GC is lost in space here at the moment. Not dropping, not going up. We still got an IHS which is broken up with a target in the 51.11 area. I am wondering whether this could be a bear flag, particularly because on SI we have what looks like a bear flag, and it's not a bad bear flag actually, which is overthrown and might be setting up for a retest of this low. Watching that with great interest. Palladium could also be a bear flag. Platinum could also be a bear flag. HG has broken higher and actually made a higher, is retesting this high here from the end of February. Keeping an open mind on that, but no current negative divergence on the hourly chart. All right, looking at KC. This looks like an overall bear flag forming. We could see another high within that bear flag. On SB, SB is still holding pretty close to the lows. I'm wondering about a retest of this February low here down in the 13.35 area. On CC, we actually had a triangle. You don't actually often, this is quite a nice technical setup. You don't actually see that this often. We had a triangle which has basically gone straight up and expanded into a perfect, or at least very close to perfect, bear flag channel. Either way, this kind of looks like a bear flag. So, but that's just interesting. You don't actually see that often. CT has gone higher, and we've broken up from a double bottom on the bigger picture. Lumber may well be just resuming the downtrend and heading back to the lows. Retest of 560 would be coming next. ZW, we're seeing some signs we might be breaking up here with the little IHS, which is trying to break up with a target in the 619 area. Bigger picture, we've got a big double bottom, which I'm thinking is going to make target over the next few months. On corn, we've got a little falling wedge here, which is broken up. I think this could all be part of a larger bull flag on the bigger picture. We shall see how that goes. All right. On the ZL chart, kind of lost in space, wondering about this continuing higher shortly though. Live cattle. Right, live cattle. We've got a break higher and continuation higher at the moment. HE, I was wondering about a double bottom here. I'm still wondering about a double bottom here, but it is looking as though, well, I'm thinking overall this is likely to be a bull flag. I could, of course, be mistaken. We do have a possible weak 60-minute buy signal brewing here. All right, let's have a quick look at questions, of which we have none, I think. All right, in that case, I think that's a wrap. Everyone take care, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. All right, cheers.